name's Andre, but I make music as RAC. I've been doing this for a very long time, since 2007. I got my start doing remixes, and that's really where I built sort of a lot of my early career, like doing remixes for all kinds of bands. Yeah, I think I've done like 250 at this point. And then I think in 2013, I switched over to doing original work. And then that's when I started to bring in a lot of the people that I had to remix. So I started to kind of build a career there. Yeah, put out 3 albums by now. One of them just came out recently, called Boy. And so, I mean, that's like a very short, abridged version of it.
You took half my questions there. Yeah. Talking about your album you just released, can you tell us your vision behind it?
Yeah, so this was, maybe just to kind of give it some context. So I'm primarily a producer, and so I don't sing on my own material, but I try to collaborate with a lot of different people. And the way that I do that is, I'll usually sit here in my studio and write just demo after demo after demo. I'll spend like sometimes 6 to 9 months just doing that constantly. And that's sort of where the themes start to emerge. And, I'm not going into this with like a very clear, vision of where it's going, but like I sort of find it as I'm working through it. And the theme that emerged for this record was more about sort of exploring my childhood, which I grew up in Portugal. I'm like half Portuguese, half American, so like there's a lot to unpack there. Right. And this was like my way to like explore that through music, which is like an emotional language of sorts. So all of that said, after I wrote all these demos, then I started to kind of go down the list of people that I wanted to work with, and just start, hitting up different, people that I admire, artists that I like, and new artists, kind of a whole mix of people, and just started, kind of throwing demos around and seeing what stuck. And then, like, I guess like 3 years go by, and then now I have a record. And so it's
amazing. And does your creative process change based on the person you're working with?
Yeah, I mean, every song is different. It really is. I wish there was an easy formula for it. There really isn't. And like some people prefer to work in the same room, write the song in like an afternoon or something like that. I prefer to take my time, like over a long period of time, and just like let it sit, let people think about it, and then come back. And but like even that, like everybody, some people write very quickly, some people take a long time, so it's like it's kind of all over the place.
Right. So would you say you have like a specific sound?
Yeah, yes and no. It's like okay, like this it's hard to explain, because like when people talk about my music, like sometimes they can describe a sound, but for me, I'm not doing that intentionally. It's like I don't have control over it. It just flows naturally. So like a sound emerges, again, just kind of through improvisation, I guess. And but it's not something that I try or am like have any real awareness of it. It's sort of just, it is what it is. Like when I sit down to write music, that's what comes out,
That's so cool. I mean, it's like you were born with this gift then. It's literally in you. That's so cool.
I mean, that's my hope. Yeah, it's like, but yeah, no, it's. I wish I could control it, because then I could like sort of direct it. But no,
it's one way. That's okay. It's like a triple threat in music. That's awesome. And like speaking of this album is based on your childhood. You started playing piano at the age of 6.
Yeah.
Correct. So like, did you always know music is something you wanted to do for a living, not just as a hobby?
Right. I mean, there was maybe periods of my, like when at one point in time, I was like sort of picking careers, I was like, for college degrees, like, okay, what am I going to go study?
Right.
And I had the option of going into graphic design, which is another interest of mine, or music. And I ended up obviously going with music, but so maybe there was a moment in time where I like envisioned something else, but for the most part, music has always been a very big part of my life. I mean, like you said, like taking piano lessons when I was a kid, but also, learning how to play guitar and things like that. So I see it as like this, like I mentioned earlier, like an emotional language. And so growing up in Portugal, like having that sort of maybe confusion, if you will, of like being Portuguese or American, or like somewhere in between, And I found that's actually where I found music to be such a like a great outlet, you know, basically. So it's always been present in my life. I mean, I love it. Yeah, I love what I do.
And in your album covers for this album, Boy, there was a lot of pink influence. Is there a meaning behind that?
Yeah, so it kind of, again, it's kind of an emerging thing. Like, so the story goes that I was basically on Instagram. I was like, I'd found this artist that I really liked. His name's Andre Reardigan. He's amazing. He's from Argentina, but he's based in Barcelona.
Right.
Like the kind of art that he makes is, it looks like real spaces, but it's all 3D art. So it's all like made in a computer, but he's so good at it, like it's like architectural, but he designs furniture, and it's like it's not your typical music kind of album art, and that's what I loved about it. And like going into this project, I really wanted something different, and I remember seeing some of his images, and it really spoke to me. Like it just stuck out immediately, and I was like, oh, it just happened to be pink. Like like it wasn't like there was no statement in it. It was just like I thought it was like a striking color, and it felt like the album. They felt connected in some deep way. So again, it was kind of an intuitive thing. I didn't think too much about it. It was just like, that feels right. I'm going to do that.
Stands out. No, it looks awesome.
Thank you.
So it makes you want to take a second look, you know?
Yeah.
And you've collaborated with some pretty incredible artists, from Lady Gaga, Kings of Leon, Linkin Park. So what have those experiences been like? And did you physically get to work with them in the studio, or? So
yeah, a lot of that stuff it ends up being remote, which is kind of interesting now because in the quarantine times, because I'm somewhat prepared for it because I've been doing this for a long time this way.
Awesome.
So I haven't felt maybe that big of a change, but like maybe with like Linkin Park, we did meet up I worked with Mike specifically, Mike Shinoda, and I went down to his studio and in LA, and we just like basically like kind of talked through a lot of ideas. We weren't really working on like music in that typical, you know, the way that you think about music being made. It's like we sit down in the studio, make music. It wasn't really like that. I was like talking about ideas and like concepts, and he's just a cool guy and just like really down to earth. And so I ended up working on their last record before Chester passed, unfortunately. But yeah, so I mean that was a really rewarding experience, because like I got to see like some of the thinking behind like how they make music.
That's
and
incredible.
It was very fascinating. But a lot of the other stuff, you know, ends up being remote, especially with remixes. It's usually sort of it's not that direct. So depending on the artist, some people are more involved than others. Yeah.
And you've also worked and created original content for HBO's Entourage and the video game Master Spy. So like, what is the creative process like for that? Do you still go in it in the same way as like writing an album, or?
It's actually different in like, practically speaking, it's the same. You're writing music, right? It's the same. But the approach is different in the sense that like, it's doing it in service of something else. So like, you know, with an album, it's like, oh, this is going to be my grand vision for the whatever. It doesn't matter. but like for a game or for Entourage or for any TV show or movie or whatever, it's in service of the scene. I mean, there are times where you want the music to be focused, but most of the time it's not. It's background, and that's fine. Like I'm more than happy to play that role, because it's another creative challenge. You know, I don't have like an ego about it or anything like that. Right. But the one funny thing about HBO is that when I worked on it, it was like I was still in college, and I couldn't afford cable, so I actually had no idea what. I actually know, I had never seen the show. I never knew anything, but they were hitting me up about like doing. I remember asking a friend, I was like, have you heard of HBO? Do you know what this is? Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's amazing.
So I ended up working on I think it was like season 3 or 4. I mean, I wasn't the main writer or anything like that, but I would fill in gaps.
Experience though.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That's really cool.
I feel so lucky that I got to do that, but yeah, I had no idea what it was. Something's working.
Speaking of that, you've been nominated for 2 Grammys. You won one in 2017 for Best Remix Recording for Tearing Me Up. So please tell us about that moment. That must have been incredible.
Oh yeah. No, it was amazing. I mean, again, never, it was never something I expected. Like, it's impossible to like have that expectation, right?
Yeah.
Even, to be honest, even when you get nominated, you're like, oh, thank God I just got nominated, like, so to get nominated 2 years in a row and to win the second time, it was kind of insane. I remember, well, I mean, that whole experience of like, walking down the aisle and the band is playing. I think the band was playing like an AC/DC song or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, hell yes.
Yes,
This is,
pumping you up.
yeah. And, I had prepared like a tiny little speech, just kind of just making sure that I thanked the right people and whatnot. And, yeah, it was really cool. And it's really interesting because it was the first time I think my parents' friends like finally understood. It's like,
Like,
oh, it's not a hobby. Okay.
that's amazing.
So it's like, it's kind of funny that like, even though I had been doing it for 10 years at that point, and also just the category is meaningful to me because it's something I devoted a lot of time to, but it's sort of a legitimizer. My manager, I'll never forget this because he turned to me like after, he was like, well, that's one for the obituary. And it's like, it's kind of dark, but also like pretty accurate,
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll follow me wherever I go. And I mean, no matter what I do, it'll always be, Grammy, whatever, award winning.
That's so cool. That's amazing.
So no, I appreciated it a lot. It was an amazing experience. I remember walking by James Hetfield from Metallica and I was like, oh my God.
You kind of like black out up there, like when you're actually giving your speech.
Yeah.
For what you did.
I mean, I've seen a video, so I can kind of like see it, relive it. But at the time, it was like so quick and just like, ugh.
Sure.
But the one funny thing about it is that the award that they give you is actually not the award you take home.
Oh,
you
no
have
way.
to. They give you like this because they don't want to print the plaques, right? Because they could give it away. So they give you this. They wear white gloves and they give you this award. There's just a dummy award, and then you take it. You're like standing up there, like thank you, and then you have to give it back, like immediately after.
So anticlimactic.
Yeah. So,
Bye.
but they had multiple because they had multiple like photo ops basically. So they had multiple people giving me multiple Grammys at one point.
So really, like a multi-Grammy winner. Okay.
Yeah.
Just add on here.
But then the next, or like a couple days later, I flew home to Portland and empty-handed because like you get it later in the mail. So it's like it took me like a month or two to get the actual Grammy, and it was like kind of just a funny experience.
Yeah, no, that's hilarious. I love it. And also, so you've played some seriously major music festivals like Coachella, Ultra, Lollapalooza. So what has been your favorite?
Well, I mean, yeah, you kind of said it, Coachella, because Coachella is like a rite of passage, basically. If you work in music and if you're an artist and you tour, you want to play Coachella. I mean, like first of all, they treat you so well there. Like the hospitality is like on another level.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. Good.
And it's also like it's just kind of cool to be there. It's like the center of that world. So, there's that side of it. But like the festival itself, like people are really cool, and like the
all good vibes. Speaking of your music, I know you did just release the album, but is there anything else we can look forward to seeing from you in the near future?
Well, part of the way that I write music is that I write a lot at once. So I always have a lot of kind of leftover material, and it's not like B-sides, like it's just things that didn't fit like the narrative of the album. So I actually have a lot of music that I want to release, and I think maybe doing an EP later this year. Well, I would love to be touring, but yeah, here we are.
Fingers crossed. Things are like so. Hopefully, and to end it off, we're gonna do some random facts.
Okay.
So what is your favorite song off the new album?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm gonna go with the song MIA.
Okay.
Not a single, but definitely my favorite. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. And what is your favorite midnight snack?
Oh, midnight snack. Probably Oreos. Actually, they're kind of like my guilty pleasure, just because like I eat way too many of them,
right?
and they're just like I can't, like once you start eating them, I just can't control myself. I feel like it's a pretty basic answer, to be honest, but like
but like who can hate Oreos? So like
right, you can't go wrong.
And who was your childhood crush growing up?
Oh,
celebrity.
Avril Lavigne, actually.
Stop! That's amazing. I'm from Canada, so.
Okay, yeah, right.
And do you have a secret talent that we don't know about?
Secret talent. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's a talent, but like I maybe it's a passion. I'll go with passion. I'm not going to claim to be super talented, but I am deeply into photography, and I love it. Like I like it's
Wow.
you know, through travel, I've gotten to see so many cool places around the world, and like my camera is always with me. I just love it. It like I can spend all day just outside, just roaming around aimlessly,
That's
taking
cool.
photos.
I feel like that
So
creative art factor though goes hand in hand, you know?
yeah.
So that's really
Well,
cool.
the one cool thing is like it's nice to have a creative outlet that isn't my job.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I feel creatively fulfilled by it, and I don't have to worry about, you know, monetizing.
Off it or like a deadline or yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. So also please let us know what platforms we can listen to your new album on.
Yeah, so Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Pandora, everywhere,
Everything.
hopefully, YouTube. Yeah, I try to make it accessible, as accessible as possible, on vinyl or cassette as well. So
Love that. That's really cool.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, we really appreciate you.
No, thank you for having me. Of course.